is required, if the regulators will let you, to borrow, to use forms of insurance that aren't really insurance, to get the credit rating agencies to say that everything's okay, because you want money to move. When money moves, you know, if you're at a financial institution, you get a commission. Either your stock price goes up and you get to sell stock and you make more money. If you're the corner mortgage broker, you know, you get more money for doing more deals. I mean, no real estate agent ever says, you know, now's not a very good time to buy. Why don't you wait? You know, the whole system is set up for more transactions, and that comes back to the need for somebody who's not paid that way, a regulator, to say, you know, there's a systemic problem here. But Greenspan believed so deeply that the markets could really be trusted to preserve the public good that, you know, again, anytime anybody said maybe there's a problem here, he said, no, there's no problem here. We're fine. Yeah.
One of the things that has changed over the course of the latter half of the century, from recessions in the 80s or financial crises across the world and the United States, is the manner in which it is reported and the way in which the narrative builds around it. So it was only recently, like nowadays, we have financial news being reported in real time across the internet. The Dow and the NASDAQ and the S&P appear on tickers on all over the television and on parts of the programming that it never would have appeared in 10 years ago.
Yeah.
Financial news is not just in the FT or in the Wall Street Journal, it's all over the place, and there's more in the way of personal investing, like sensational shows like Kramer and stuff like that.
Right.
How would you situate this new information environment, and how would you circumscribe its role in perpetuating, in staving off, or in general informing the dynamics of this past crisis?
It feeds bubbles. I mean, no doubt. I mean, there couldn't have been a tech bubble without you know, not only the internet in terms of allowing people to trade, you know, with the click of a computer mouse, but also to get information, as you say, in real time. I mean, you know, back in the 80s, research itself was not widely available, and the big brokerage houses, the Merrill Lynch's and Morgan Stanley's, you know, what they brought to the table was they had these teams of researchers who would, you know, go down to the agriculture department when the numbers got released on some commodity, and they would relay it back to the guys in the office, and the traders would get this information over their own internal system. And people paid these very big commissions to buy stocks and commodities and to trade because they were getting access to information that was not available to everyone. So then suddenly, well, first, just television, cable television in particular, makes information much more widely available, and then the internet makes all this really esoteric stuff available to everyone. So the brokerage houses suddenly had a problem in just their basic business model. I mean, why would you pay $75 to trade a stock with Merrill Lynch when you could pay $10 to Charles Schwab or E-Trade in the 90s? Well, so the traditional brokerage houses needed to come up with a new model. And the model they came up with was initial public offerings. I mean, this was a direct outgrowth of the breakdown of their monopoly. So, they needed to come up with a whole bunch of new companies doing all these new things that sounded so exciting. And that's where the tech bubble came from. And so the way the business model worked was, if Morgan Stanley was the underwriter for AOL, the only way you could get shares of AOL when that initial public offering hit the street was to have a brokerage account with Morgan Stanley. So you had to pay these inflated commissions the rest of the time, because otherwise you just run to the discount brokerage. And that made more and more people interested in the stock market, because suddenly the brokerage houses themselves had a greater incentive than ever to tout these new companies, and the CEOs of these new companies became stories in the press. So all of a sudden we had CEOs like Steve Case, the CEO of America Online, or this total fraud, see Michael Armstrong, who basically killed AT&T, treated as rock stars by Fortune magazine, by newspapers, and this created kind of a frenzy. And at the same time, of course, what's going on is the financial industry is getting access to a greater and greater pool of investors. So traditionally, you had a pension. Like you would retire from your company and you would get a check for X number of dollars every month for the rest of your life. Well, the old pension system was expensive. Let's have what we now have, the 401k system for most companies, where they just kick a set amount of money a month into an account that gets traded by a bank, that gets managed, a basket of mutual funds or stocks or whatever. But suddenly ordinary people are very interested in what's happening in the stock market because they're getting statements about their retirement accounts. And now there are all these discount brokers, courtesy of the internet, who are fanning the flames of this fever for stocks. It became a feedback loop, and I think that's been very destabilizing.
Can I ask a follow-up question?
Yeah, please do.
More specifically about the recent crisis. Barring the immense structural problems and the loss of real debt, like the realization that there were a lot of toxic assets and that so much had been leveraged against them, can you assess like a dollar value or just assess in general the effect that the presentation of this news had? It was being talked about in highly sensationalist terms as like the new depression, as a threat to our entire civilization, sort of in apocalyptic language. And I would imagine that afterwards people who own small businesses and managers of household incomes would respond accordingly. And consumer confidence would contract and there wouldn't be as much circulation in the economy. Is it reasonable to say that that exacerbated the crisis, the way it was reported?
I mean, I don't buy the notion that the terms were sensationalistic. Now, unfortunately, we'll never know what the real threat was. I mean, had there been no bailouts, for instance, had Bush and Paulson and Bernanke continued to say, it's a little mortgage problem, this isn't the real economy, we'll never know, what would have happened. And there's there's a conspiracy theory out there. And the conspiracy theory is, that Hank Paulson, who had spent his career on Wall Street and at Goldman Sachs, saw this amazing opportunity to transfer incredible sums of money to Wall Street. Good luck proving that one. But I mean, the idea that it was purely sensationalistic rhetoric. I mean, I talked to a whole bunch of economists from late 2007, through the crisis, and there were certain people I went back to who had been consistent and who had been correct about what was happening to date. Who by the end of 2008, I mean, Mark Zandi. Here's a guy who's a Democrat, but who actually advised McCain's campaign, and who was very early in predicting a pretty high likelihood of recession, but was not at all sensationalistic, who by the end of 2008 is saying, I think there's a 1 in 4 chance that we're going to have a replay of the Great Depression. I mean, that